The party creep. This is going to be long due to necessary contextual information. Last year was my senior year of college, and I was living in a large house with 8 other girls. One of the ladies had a winter birthday around Christmas, and we decided to have a big bash for those events right after finals. The birthday girl was a bartender and had invited quite a few regulars. Fine with us. Big parties are always a blast, right? My good friend, who went to a different college, was coming to the party before we drove home together the next day. Also, there with me was my boyfriend. This was the first time they met, and they instantly became bros. The 3 of us were doing shots of my personal stash in my room as the festivities were slowly starting, and I locked my door when we went downstairs. All the bedrooms had deadbolts, and everyone always took care to deadbolt their room and keep a key on them during events like this, so our stuff didn't get stolen. Flash forward to the party. It's getting crowded in our house, and I was dancing with some friends when my friend and boyfriend decided to go mess around with a machete behind my house. Not out of the ordinary for those two. I was feeling pretty buzzed and was being INFP. I decided to go up to my room and shut my eyes for a little bit. I didn't lock the door behind me, since the only reason I was locking it in the first place was fear of my stuff being jacked while I was downstairs. When I heard it open, I assumed it was my boyfriend and friend finally out of the branches to chop. I opened my eyes to see a guy coming into my room. I recognized him as being a regular at my roommate's bar, as I had met him at her bar just the night before. The booze brought me out the best in me at that moment, and I immediately shouted, "What the fuck are you doing in here?" The guy responds by holding his hands up in the air and saying, Whoa, calm down, but with no explanation. I'm just pissed now, so I'm getting in his face and backing him towards the door, saying, "Get the fuck out now!" As he was backing up towards and out the door, he kept saying things like, "I was just checking on you, and relax, what's your problem?" He's now out my room, and I lock my door behind me as I crawl him down the steps into the main party, where he disappears, and my boyfriend and friend finally come back in. I tell them about what happened, but it's too crowded for me to point the guy out to him. Whatever, maybe he just saw us taking shots up there and didn't know I'd be guarding my 5th. Fast forward again, it's now around 1:30 or 2 now, and the party is still going on, and though the crowd is still thinning out a little bit. My boyfriend and friend and I head up to my room to rip a few more shots before the night is over, and I'm shocked to see the same guy waiting outside my door. We all immediately confront him, which is easy with my boyfriend and friend being pretty big dudes. He kept making excuses and sticks with, "I left my coat in there, I can't leave without my coat." I may have been drunk, but I know he did not have a coat when he came into my room. We tell him he needs to leave, and he continues to plead with us, so we eventually get him to go downstairs. After hanging out on the stairs for a little while, we went back into my room. I was grabbing some stuff to take to my boyfriend's house so my friend would have my bed to sleep on for the night. As we were walking out of my bedroom, it's around 3:30 a.m. or 4 at this point. We see someone go into one of my roommate's rooms down the hall. Since she was still downstairs partying, we immediately had a bad feeling. I sent my boyfriend and friend into her room, where they found the guy halfway under her bed. He grabbed a black pea coat in her room, claiming it was his, and we chased him downstairs. At this point, we told all our other roommates and their significant others to keep a close eye on him and to make sure he physically leaves before going to bed. My boyfriend and I left, but my friend said the guy didn't leave until the birthday girl's boyfriend physically kicked him out at 5:30 in the morning. He took the coat, so he thought maybe he really had put it up there, and my roommate forgot to lock her door, but lingered outside her house for 10 minutes or so before actually leaving. I don't know what his intentions were, but I'll never forget that night. I recently spent time with my roommate, who informed me that one girl has been missing a pea coat since that party. and since she wasn't at the party when it happened, no one really connected the dots. Weird. Hippie party goes bad. I worked at a CSA organic farm for a summer. Lots of new age hippie types and stone college kids. You know the drill. This farm was by no means fancy, and my lodgings were above the garage and accessed by a 12-foot metal ladder with no water, electricity, or doors. The garage was attached to the main house, so that the base of ladder was right by the entrance to the kitchen, relevant for later. Every year, there was a large gathering called the Fest for the Farm's owner's friend Bob's birthday. Bonfires and psychedelics were to be expected, plus live music and food and a lot of people. Most guests just set up a tent for the night on the large property, being in absolutely no shape to drive. A couple of my friends threw up a tent, and we set about helping with the preparations. The party went well, with only one visit from the cops. Around 2 a.m. or so, I headed up to my bed, from which I could hear the continued revelry. I had just started to drift off when I heard the unmistakable sound of footsteps on the ladder to my room. I sat up, expecting one of my friends to come in, but it was a random guy I had not seen before. As he stepped onto the floor, he threw the ladder to the far side of the opening. I called out to him, "Hey guy, head back to the party. You can't sleep up there." He continued silently shambling towards my bed, starting to unzip his pants, and I start to panic. I had assumed he was just a really intoxicated guy who had just wandered in accidentally and needed to be turned around, but now he was creeping me out. So I spoke again. "You need to turn around and leave now." Again, no response, and within 5 feet of me at this point, so I jumped out of bed and grabbed a broom, wielding it in a deadly as manner as I could, and I started screaming at him while jabbing my mighty broom. "Get the fuck out of here! Turn around and get out!" He finally started to back up, while I continued to yell for him to go, to put down the ladder and get the hell out of there. The whole thing took about 15 minutes, and despite there still being dozens of people wandering about within 50 feet, nobody responded to my yelling. When he was gone, I tried going back to sleep, but unsurprisingly, it was a no-go. I got up at 6 and just sat outside on the front steps smoking until one of my friends woke up and passed by on his way to the outhouse. I was rather shaken up by the whole encounter, to be honest, but didn't mention it. My friend and I went into the kitchen and were then greeted with an unpleasant surprise. There in the living room, passed out on the couch, was my unwanted visitor. At this point, I turned to my friend and told him the story because he wanted to know why I suddenly looked so murderous. As few people were awake at this time, we simply made some food and went back outside to start to clean up. A few hours later, more people had started to rise, including the owner of the farm, Bryce. We went back into the kitchen to tell him what had happened and saw that couch guy had become kitchen floor guy. He was literally passed out in the middle of the floor with the people walking over him. I asked Bryce who the guy was, and his response was a shrug. Nobody seemed to know who he was, though at a party like this, even with a guest list, randoms show up. The mood soured further for me when, after I explained what happened, Bryce responded again with a shrug. "Nothing really happened, so no reason to make a fuss." At that, I went back outside to angry clean while waiting for my other friend to wake up so we could leave. We went within 20 minutes of her waking up. It was near the end of the growing season anyways, so I didn't really have to go back to the farm much if at all after that. It really bothered me that so many people must have heard me screaming and did not respond, and that my boss didn't even give a damn either. So, random creepy guy, let's not meet again. Uninvited party guest. This is nowhere near as bad as some things I've read on the subreddit, but it kinda chilled me at the time, and has made me feel a lot less safe in the city at night. It happened to me last year. I was 22 years old, female, and had recently moved down to Sydney from a more rural coastal town for work. One night, my boyfriend at the time and I were heading into the city for a friend's party in a fairly dodgy inner city suburb. We weren't really sure of the address, so we were walking from the train station kind of aimlessly. This was probably at about 9 or 8 at night and in the winter time, so it was pretty dark, and the streets were deserted as it was a residential area. We reached the street the house was on, but it was long and not well lit, with those adjoined tourist houses, so it was a bit confusing at first. We walked past this young woman. She didn't look much older than myself. She was just standing there alone on the footpath, staring blankly. I could not help myself, and as we walked past, I asked her if she was okay, thinking she might be lost or something like that. She muttered something like, "Far from it," in a monotone voice, then kind of lurched towards me. I was stunned, but my boyfriend grabbed my arm and pulled me away and started walking briskly. The woman kept walking towards us, but slowly, keeping pace with us. As we quickened, so did she. She was literally behind my shoulder. I could feel her brushing against me, but she did not say anything at all. At this point, I realized that she did not have all her faculties and was a bit irked by her silently glued to my side. My boyfriend was not a big guy and not great in a confrontation, so I was not all confident that if she turned violent or unpredictable, he'd be able to do anything. So we ended up pretty much jogging up and down the street, looking for the house, occasionally crossing the road and moving in between parked cars. We eventually found the party, and there were some guys outside smoking, so the door was open, and my boyfriend basically pushed me straight inside. However, the guys outside assumed the woman was with us, as she was basically arm in arm with me, and they let her in as well. Once we realized, we kinda yelled out, "No, don't let her in!" And a couple guys took her outside. They asked her if she needed help, and she just said, "I'll just wait here for my friend." She sat down on the steps by the front door, silently for a good hour after we had closed the door. She eventually left because she wasn't anywhere in sight when we left the party, and we walked quick smart back to the station. I'm sure she wasn't an actual physical threat, but her appearance was well unnerving, and the fact that she had said absolutely nothing and followed us through all our dodging and weaving, probably touching my hair, was quite creepy as well. I felt stupid for being naive, but in all honesty, I would probably still try to help someone in that situation again. Probably not when I'm alone, though. Nine-year-old corpse party. This isn't too terribly interesting, but after reading some stories, I really wanted to tell mine. I'm 18 years old now, so it was 9 years ago when this happened. A girl named Dee moved in next door to me the weekend after my 9th birthday. I wanted to play with her like all the time. She was really sweet, kind, and smart, even though she was 2 years below me. A few weeks after she moved in, her parents were out on vacation, so she slept at my house for a few days, and my dad bought us chalk to play with. Being creepy little girls, we made chalk bodies on the sidewalk in front of our houses, while she pretended to take forensic analysis. I pretended to jot down notes, because fuck yeah, CSI. A blue pickup went by. I decided it was going too fast, so I wrote down his plates. More fast cars went by, and I wrote down all their plates as well, along with the car type and color, because I was strange like that. I told Dee that something seemed weird on my paper. She looked and said that the blue pickup was there like 5 times. We shrugged it off and carried on. We made so many chalk bodies, it was insane. Minutes passed, and the blue pickup came around again, but really really slow, like really slow. I was scared and told Dee to go inside my house while I cleaned up. She didn't want to, but I bribed her with lemonade. I hosed down the sidewalk to clean the chalk, and I picked up our things and went inside. The next day, forgetting all about the incident, Dee and I held a lemonade stand because we wanted earnings. We did fairly well, and for 20 cents for a Dixie cup, we made about $30 in one hot day. Before we packed up, a blue pickup truck came around. I was really scared, but my mom was with us like good parents should, so I held her hand and grabbed Dee's dress. He walked up to us in a long brown coat and hat, even though it was like 90 or something. He smelled like smoke, not cigarettes, like paper was on fire. He bought 3 lemonades, and I will never forget this as long as I live. He lifted up his gross, ratty hat, looked me in the eye, and said this: "It's a real good thing you cleaned up all that chalk, little sister. I wish it had been darker. I would have made my own corpse party out there." He laughed and drove away. I had never been so terrified in my life. In the end, my mom doesn't remember it, and I don't talk to Dee anymore. But I will never forget that guy's words. Creepy party host. This summer, I finally got my license and a car, but my mom was scared of me driving down the block, so I decided to let her use me for errands or to drive my brother, whose license got suspended, around. My brother asked me to drive him to a party, and since I'm 18 and have pretty good social skills, I thought it wouldn't be a problem. My brother is 24, and the guy throwing the party was 28. I played some beer pong with my brother but didn't drink anything since I was the one driving. After a while, I walked to the kitchen to get water, and the party host followed me and was asking to mix me a drink, and then proceeded to ask me all these personal questions. Another guest walks in and distracts the guy, so I just left. At this point, I didn't think anything strange. My brother's friend bought me some nachos, and I sat down next to this girl to eat. The party host and like 2 other guys sat down with us and started talking. The girl got up and went to check on her boyfriend. The guy kept talking about their past and about their 10-year high school reunion coming up. I felt really young and awkward sitting with these guys who were 10 years older than me. But this one guy who recently got out of the Navy, who was really nice, and was telling me all these submarine stories. The host sat on the chair next to me and took my nachos and told me he wouldn't give them back unless I gave him my number. I gave him the number to this useless prepaid phone with minutes at my house and thought that it was not a big deal. The host asked me if I wanted to see the cats that were being kept in his room, and I said sure. I realized that this was naive, but I was surrounded by people 6 to 10 years older than me, and my brother was nowhere to be seen. As we walk into the room, the guy locks the door and gets me on the bed, and I pet one of the cats on the floor. He pats the bed for me to sit, and I said that we should probably let the cat sleep. He told me that he was really trying to get me alone, and told me to tell me more about myself. I got really nervous and started stuttering and saying I was 18 and what high school I recently graduated from. Then there was a knock on the door, and luckily it was my brother's friend who said my brother was looking for me. I walked out and was trying to avoid the party host, but he kept following me around. Finally, my brother was ready to leave, and I drove him back home and told him what happened. The next day, I noticed a text on my extra phone we have at my house, and it was the party host guy. He was saying all this nonsense about how he thought I was beautiful and young and exciting. I told him to please back off, I'm just 18, and even recently got out of a relationship. He would keep texting about how he can throw parties for me at his house, or that I could go over for some privacy. He kept asking where I lived, and just didn't take no for an answer. He would call and ask to pick me up and take me out and stuff like that. I decided to just turn off that phone and keep it hidden for the rest of the summer, and now that I turn it back on, I deleted all the messages, and I guess ignoring him finally worked.